Hello everybody, it's Crafty Carol here from craftycarolscards.co.uk, and I have come today. I want to start to talk about lots of ways you can use heat embossing. So I want to start off by talking about first the tools you need. And the key things are you need a watermark stamp pad. We use Versamark. I think it's one of the best ones. So you need the Versamark pad. You need an embossing buddy. Now, Stampin' Up have stopped selling these for some reason, don't know why. But you can get them from other craft shops. Or if you haven't got one of these, a used tumble dryer sheet works just as well. The purpose of this is to take any grease and any static off the card or the vellum or whatever surface you're working on, so that the embossing powder that you're going to use only sticks where you want it to. So really important to have something like this. An embossing buddy or a used tumble dryer sheet is fine as well. And of course you need a heat tool. So this one is the Stampin' Up one. It just has 2 speeds, 1 and 2. It's fairly quiet, so I can usually use it when I am doing videos and things, but to be honest, often if I use something like this, the sound cuts out. So I tend to do my embossing a bit off camera because it's easier to make sure everything works. But heat tool, really important. Do not use a hairdryer. They don't work. You do need a proper heat tool. And of course, the final thing you need is embossing powder. Now, I tend to keep mine in used, well, very clean, but used Chinese containers or fast food containers, because I find I spread everything everywhere, as those who know me know. So I put my embossing powder in these tubs, and I just use a little spoon. I'll show you that with this one. This is where I usually take the top off and manage to spill it everywhere anyway. But I just use an old plastic spoon. Running out of gold, still plenty there. It's amazing how much you get in the tubs. It doesn't look very much, but actually it's loads. I am running out of gold. I might need to top that up. But I just use a little spoon like this, and then I've got this to catch the embossing powder as I use it over the card, as you'll see as we go forward to make the cards. So I'll leave that there because I'm going to use gold in a minute. I've already got it all over my fingers. So those are the things you need to do embossing. So I think most people know about the general idea of embossing, which is that you can stamp an image and emboss it like this. So using the embossing buddy, I'm going to clean my card that I'm going to stamp on. And I'm going to use this stamp from the Colour and Contour set. And if I want to emboss, then with a coloured powder, then we'll talk about clear powders in a bit, but with a coloured powder, gold, silver, black, copper, or white are the colours that Stampin' Up produce. So if I want to do gold, which I've just had out, I'm going to stamp up my stamp, just like you would with any ink stamp. And I'm going to put something on the bottom, so I'm going to leave this on the top. So I'm going to have this part way up, stamp my image in the Versamark. It's quite sticky, so be prepared for it to stick a little bit as it comes off. And you're not going to rush with the time, it doesn't matter too much. With the Versamark, it stays sticky a fairly long time. So then I can get my embossing powder and I can cover my image with my embossing powder. I've also got, you'll note, some paper on the desk. You can just use a piece of paper for this and just collect the embossing powder on the paper, and then it goes back into the tub. That's my fail safe for when I mess up the tub and manage to spill it. I've got the paper underneath. So having stamped this in the Versamark, I've now put the embossing powder on top. So I'm going to heat it up, and as you see it heating, I'll hopefully show this even if the noise is too much, then you'll be able to see the embossing powder melting. So another little key is to heat up your embossing tool before you use it. So just turn it on, let it blow. I'll hold it down here so it might not get in the way of me speaking. Turn it on and just let it heat for a bit until you can feel that the air coming out is nice and hot before you emboss. And if I turn that off so I can speak, keep moving it and keep it about 1.5 inches, well, probably a couple of inches away from your actual image. So you can see there that half my image has melted. Hopefully you can see. I got that in the picture, I think so. Half the image is melted. I now need to do the other half. So that is my image, and hopefully you can see that. We've got a nice sunny day today, so hopefully you can see the shine on that. So that is my outline image that I've now got, and now I can colour in that image, I can put background behind that image, I can do whatever I like to make that a beautiful image and make up into a card. So there are other ways to do it. If instead of in Versamark I stamp my image in Memento, in our black ink, I can use Versamark in a slightly different way. So this time I shall stamp up my image just in Memento. So there's my image just in Memento in our black ink. So I can use my fill-in stamp just to put a colour in it, and that would look, if I use this card I've made before, that just fills in the image with the colour. So I could do that. It's a very rough fill-in, it's not an exact fill-in. It's supposed to be arty, so it does fill in like that. So I could use that, or I could do something different. When we have, like any other stamp pad, if you have Versamark, you also get ink with it, an ink refill. And you can use this in a very similar way to use any other ink. So I can put a little tiny bit on one of the blocks. I'll just put a little bit of the Versamark ink fill on there. And then I'm going to use a little brush, just a little paint brush, to pick that up. And then I'm going to paint the middle of these flowers. Fairly roughly. I don't want to be exact because I don't want it to be an absolute fill-in, because I want to keep it the arty look that'll match the actual stamp set. But I'm just squidging really that Versamark round my flowers. It's like fill-in, it's like painting with Versamark. So I filled in my flowers, and now what I can do is use one of my colours. I think I'll use copper this time. So I've got my copper again in my bag. A box. Ooh, what am I talking about? It's a box. I need to refill some of these. I love embossing, so I do quite a bit. But I've still never used more than one pad of this ever in my life. So there, I can now put that powder on, and if I heat that, and I'm going to heat it from the bottom, because that's the other thing I forgot to mention. When you're heating with your heat gun, you can heat from underneath, and if you heat from underneath, you get slightly less mottling, if you like, of the colour on top. I quite want this mottle, so I may do it both sides, but let's just try it from underneath to show you. So you can see how that's given a rather nice sort of copper, what do they call it when you've got that sort of bashed copper look, a nice bashed copper look to my flowers in that one. So that's a second way to think about using embossing and heat embossing, and I think that's a lovely effect. Then I can actually use my Versamark pad, and I can use it, just scrape it over the top of the sheet. Now, I haven't bothered with the embossing buddy on that for obvious reasons. I've covered the sheet in Memento. So this time, which colour should we use this time? Let's use the silver this time. Just so you can see all of these gorgeous embossing powders. So this is my silver. So I've just Versamarked just with the pad across this sheet of paper. So I'm going to cover this sheet of paper with embossing powder. So you can see I didn't get any Versamark on the bottom there, which doesn't really matter. And just tap lightly to get rid of any excess. And what you can see from here, even before I heat emboss it, is that we've got swirls and stripes and a rather nice effect. So if we now heat that, we've now got a rather pretty background for a card. And obviously you can use quite a heavy, I hope you can see that. It's just like stripes, and is that getting, hopefully that's getting in shot. I'm going to check the videos and just check you can see what I'm trying to show you, but it gives sort of stripes and a mottled effect and sort of swirls, and it's just rather beautiful. So that will make a nice background for an image on top. Now you can do exactly the same if you used a sheet of the silver foil. So again, I can either, what I can do is actually, I've got some Versamark remaining on here, so why not use it? I can put blobs on, so I'll just do some squirrely blobs. They're a bit regular really, they're not as perhaps as very variable as I was thinking, but hey, there's that. And then I can use my Versamark pad, and this time I'm just going to use the very edge of the pad, just scraped across. So a bit lighter than before, and I'm scraping it in different directions, so I'm going to get a slightly different effect when I then add my embossing powder. And I'm actually going to use, which shall I use? I might use the silver again, because you'll see then the effect this gives, which is very subtle but rather nice. So again, this is one reason I actually use one of these dishes, because it is so much better than trying to manage this and getting the embossing powder absolutely everywhere. So you can see the effect of that one. I need to put it under something flat just to squish it. Was a bit in the middle, hasn't melted, just a sec. There we go. You can see because the powder stays sort of dark when you haven't melted it properly. Bit that side as well. There, that's got it all done. So you can see the two effects there. This is with the blobs of Versamark, providing a sort of dotty, strange dotty background. And this is with the Versamark pad sort of smeared across, which is a rather nice effect. So hopefully that is in view enough so you can see the effects on there. Could have used a different colour on here, which obviously would have given a much stronger effect, but I like that as a background. I think that's a nice way to use embossing powder. So just to compare those two backgrounds, this one's on the silver foil and this one is on the white card. Very similar, but slightly different depending on what you want to do with your project. Right, so for this card I want to use the clear embossing powder, which I haven't got in a box. I've actually just got this here, so I do need my sheet underneath. And I'm going to stamp the stamp down here, but I'm going to then very quickly, and you need to work quickly with this, we're going to add some clear embossing powder. So I need to work particularly quickly. You can use any colour you like. To do. Oh, this is dangerous. That's a very full pot. It's going to go everywhere. Never mind. So I'm going to use my embossing putty to start off with to make sure my card is free of any static. And then I am going to do colour on colour. So I'm going to use my fresh freesia and stamp my random flowers. And I'm going to stamp one side then the other. So I'm going to stop halfway to put the powder on, just because I know if the ink gets too dry it won't stick. So when you're using ink pads and embossing, you need to be quick. That's the most important thing. So I'm going to ink my stamp up and very quickly just do some random flowers down there, and equally quickly get my clear embossing powder on. Oop. Now I don't know if you can see, but that's made them look really, really, really pale. So let me just, running out of space here. So I'm going to tidy this up first. And this is the beauty of using paper, because then you can put all this back in its jar. Carefully. This is where I find it won't all fit in because it was very full. And I've disturbed it. Oh, not bad. There we go. So I want that again this side. So I've done those ones. I'm going to do the same on this other side. So again, ink it up. You'll see the difference now between the inked one and the embossed image. Again, get the powder on quickly. That was harder because it was, I needed to take care not to touch these images. So now I've covered my card with my ink and my clear embossing powder. I need to tidy up a bit. Let me tidy up this first and then we'll heat emboss it and show you what it looks like. I don't think I will ever lose the joy of watching an image come out when you emboss it and watching the powder, just watching that powder melt. So I'm hoping you can see that that's now given these a shine. So you see the colours come back through, but now it's embossed and you can see the shine. Hopefully, believe me if you can't see it, it is there. These images now shine. When I've finished my image and put that down the centre, that embossing will still stand out, but I've got a little bit of extra interest around the edge of the card because of the embossing that I've done there. In part 2, I'm going to show you how you can work with the Stamparatus and give yourself more time when using clear embossing powder and stamped images. I'm going to talk about how we can use acrylic blocks to make backgrounds. I'm going to talk about embossing on different types of surfaces. But I hope you've enjoyed this little quick run through the basics of embossing. I will make up some of these into cards and show you what the cards look like afterwards. But I hope you enjoyed this little video and I will see you again for part 2 of heat embossing very soon. Bye for now.